with Cobus Claassens, head of Pilgrims Africa Security Company and former member of Executive Outcomes, talking about his life as a gun for hire and the role of private military companies on the modern battlefield. So, UN Convention bans the use of mercenaries, while civilian governments use it as a dirty word. And yet we see that time and time again, mercenaries come to the rescue, let's say in Sierra Leone, for instance, against Boko Haram, etc. Why are private military contractors more effective than UN peacekeepers or national armies, for that matter?
Well, again, it comes down to an innovative mix of military strategy and tactics mixed with business principles. So that's where the PMC has an advantage over an army, if I could call it that. They would respond, for example, to a client request in the quickest, most efficient way possible. Political considerations not so much foremost in their planning. Business principles are, if you're getting paid by the hour, then you would make sure that you're as efficient as you can be in that hour. So that's first and foremost where PMCs can be more efficient than militaries. I have to qualify that though. There's no PMC on this planet that can fight a major war. That's not the point, and that's never where PMCs comes in. At this point in time and into the foreseeable future, PMCs provides a limited yet quick and efficient solution as part of a larger and broader solution. For example, you mentioned Boko Haram here in Nigeria, and I happen to be in Nigeria and I happen to understand what happened here. The PMC that came here was not contracted to win the whole war. The PMC that came here was contracted to train a unit and to create that from scratch, and then to go into combat and achieve limited objectives, so as to show the Nigerian military some initiative, to get them on the front foot, to get some momentum going, and to achieve certain limited objectives. I believe they were contracted initially only to come in and rescue the Chibok girls. You remember the girls that were kidnapped from their school. And that mission then changed eventually and became slightly broader in scope. But it was never the idea that they would stay here for years and fight the war that is meant to be fought by the national army. They were for a specific mission, and that's where some people make the mistake and report wrongly. Nigerian soldiers are brave and physically capable to fight, and quite willing to fight. As a matter of fact, they're some of the best in the world. I've fought with them. I can say that. However, their leadership has failed them. Past leadership has degenerated the logistical capability of the Nigerian military, and their training has been lacking behind. So there a PMC can come in, pick up the slack very quickly, restore the training standards and doctrine, at the same time help them with their logistical supply and procurement so that the right things are bought, the things that will matter and will make a difference. Teach them how to use that, help them to deploy that, and then step back and step out of the picture. So a PMC's role is a limited, albeit a very effective one.
So Nigeria continues its struggle with Boko Haram, which is now seemingly split into two factions. Your former colleagues from EO have put Boko Haram on the run 3 years ago, working for the Nigerian government. But seeing that the group is still here, were their efforts not enough? How would you assess?
Well, first of all, the former EO, as you say, Executive Outcomes, was disbanded a long time ago. The company that was contracted to come and help the Nigerian government was a different company. Some of the personalities were the same, but believe me, very few. On the whole, this was a different company, a different bunch of people. And I know, because I met some of them and I spoke to them, and obviously we interact on social media and via email and so forth. That they do a good job, they did a brilliant job. They did fantastically well, considering the constraints of time and money. They were given just a part of the budget that they were promised, and they were given a very short period of time, as a matter of fact, over December, to mobilize. And, you know, a mobilization like that would be a logistical effort. And logistics means arms and ammunition. Nobody sells arms and ammunition over December to a private company. Everybody goes on holiday. So they pulled off half a miracle. I say half a miracle because, unfortunately, due to financial constraints, they confined themselves to base, and then they left. They withdrew out of Nigeria. It's a great pity that they were not given the opportunity to finish what they were contracted for. I believe they would have saved hundreds of thousands of lives, and Nigeria's northeast would be in a politically far more stable condition than it is right now.
Like a lot of other militants in Africa, Boko Haram is operating in an area where it's easy to cross the border and flee into Chad, Nigeria. Cameroon is facing too much pressure. Can Nigeria even deal with it on its own?
No, I don't think so. Nigeria needs a concentrated effort. It has to be a collaborative effort between Niger, Cameroon, and Chad, at least. And Nigeria and all of these other countries needs help. Most of their militaries hark back to conventional days. So their order of battle, their structures, the way they teach their soldiers and train them is in a conventional manner. Unfortunately, they are facing a counterinsurgency or an insurgency enemy, and they need to adopt a counterinsurgency strategy and tactics and equipment and formations. They need help with that. They need to be assisted in order to restructure. The material, the manpower on the ground is fantastic. They're brave, they're strong, they're physically capable, they're nationalistic, they're proud of their countries. They will fight. But they need to be helped how to fight, and they need to be equipped correctly and trained correctly.
I read that back in Sierra Leone, Executive Outcomes was so successful because it was able to get help from local militias who knew the areas and the people. In the fight against Boko Haram, do you see much trust between the military operating in the country's northeast and the locals?
Well, there's an important decision for governments that are faced with an enemy like Boko Haram has to make, and that is whether to enlist civilian help officially. In some countries like Sierra Leone, it was done successfully. The local hunting societies was organized in a paramilitary group, and a part of that was placed under Executive Outcomes control and utilized very effectively. The same can happen here, but first of all, it has to be a political decision by the political leadership of the country. Are we going to arm civilians and put them in harm's way in order to supply and support the military? If they do make that decision, and however wide or limited that decision may be, then those people can be invaluable. As a matter of fact, right now, the fight is carried to Boko Haram and its offspring by local militias that are simply armed with shotguns and the occasional AK-47. But these people are fighting to protect their lands, their villages, and their people. So they are effective in what they are doing in a counterinsurgency role. I think there's scope for that to be organized, well-controlled, well-trained, well-mobilized, and it will certainly add value.
Boko Haram pledged allegiance to ISIS a long time ago, but do you see an ISIS province in Nigeria's northeast as a real possibility at this stage, or is it more like a jihadi pipe dream?
Look, I'm sure there's a technical difference between ISIS, Boko Haram, ISWAP, Al-Qaeda in the Sahel, and whatnot. If you take a step back and you look at the problem, it is a militant Islamist problem. They each have a unique character, unique leaders, and maybe slight differences in tactics and an approach to the issue, but it's a common enemy, and it stretches all the way across the region now, and it should be seen as that. So I have no idea whether ISIS would establish a cell here and call themselves that, or that they would ride on the back of the already established Islamist militant movements here. For me, there's an enemy, and it is destabilizing the state. It's killing a lot of innocent people, needs to be stopped.
Boko Haram reportedly uses child soldiers, and so did the Revolutionary United Front, the group you faced off with in Sierra Leone. Did you ever have to engage a unit that included children? I mean, how tough is it for a soldier to face them on a battlefield? Is the person in his sights a child first and, a soldier second, or vice versa?
Look, in Africa, young people has been combatants forever. In Sierra Leone, we found that immediately. It's really hard for a soldier in a contact situation, in a battle situation, to distinguish the age of the opponent. All he sees is a shadow with a gun firing at him. And he's completely within his rights, and it is internationally his right to defend himself or to attack that objective and kill that person. If it turns out to be a 12-year-old with an AK-47, it's heartbreaking, but unfortunately unavoidable. It has happened, and it will continue to happen, because these are not standing armies. These are not people that play by the rules. Yes, they recruit children. Children are responsible for major atrocities, and they form a significant part of the combat force of Boko Haram and ISWAP. Double tragedy. There's nothing to be done to avoid that. It's a long-term solution. Kids belong in school, not under arms.
Conventional armies at this point have been going high-tech with drones, satellites, other hardware in place. Is this high-tech apparel also available to PMCs? Are they using the latest and the hottest, or do you guys just make do with what you've got?
No, what astonishes me is where military technology has gone over the last decade or decade and a half. The fact that a man can sit in a container in the continental United States and direct a drone to kill an enemy halfway around the world at the push of a button is amazing. PMCs definitely do not have access to that level of sophisticated armaments. The best the PMC can hope for is a working GPS, perhaps good radio or satellite communications, and perhaps a little bit better armaments than what the enemy has. But oftentimes it's an even match. AK-47s, heavy machine guns, anti-tank weapons, perhaps the odd helicopter or fixed-wing aircraft or two that makes the difference.
Cobus, thank you very much for this interview. Different to have heard your insight. We're talking to Cobus Claassens, head of Pilgrims Africa and veteran of executive outcomes, discussing his life as a soldier for hire and the future of privatized war. That's it for this edition of Sophie & Co. I will see you next time.